It's up.
Live on my end.
Live? Oh my gosh. It's actually
First
giving me,
time.
wow. Thank you, Be Live. It's showing me that there's an issue, but I don't think it's anything that's important. So, oh
It
my
shows
gosh,
live
welcome.
here.
Thank you, Be Live. Perfect. Are we good? Was that your
Yes,
phone?
that
Okay,
was my
perfect.
phone.
Oh
Good
my
to go.
gosh. Hey, welcome to the October 30th. We're at the end of October, 2024 edition of Living Courageously Exposed. For those of you who are like, wait a minute, I've been listening to Live and Unscripted. Yes, you are in the right place. We have gone back to our Living Courageously Exposed name as part of our branding and just continuity of those brands. And so, for those of you new to the broadcast, this is a place where we build community and give voice to those who are doing it different, going against the grain, and learning to go with the flow while kicking the door open for others who are on similar journeys. So you can find those past broadcasts on the Righteous Rebels Facebook group page, also on therighteousrebels.com. And then where else do we have those?
YouTube.
You can look up, oh yes, the Righteous Rebels YouTube. So, oh my gosh. So really, we don't have a lot of housekeeping today. We're in some transition, as you guys know, and we'll just keep you posted as that like makes its way into formation. Um, but for those of you new to our broadcast, we always do a little bit of breathing. This is a way because this is a podcast that is led by inspiration. We like to have you present with us. And more importantly, we like to be present with you. So, breathing is this most beautiful thing that we do that oxygenates the body, it keeps us strong and healthy, but it also gets our brain and our hearts and our guts into this beautiful, coherent, slowed down state where we can be present, where we can actually find solutions to issues we may be facing. Where if we're in an argument, it can just bring us present right here, right now. So today, as you let go of everything that's happened already and you let go of everything you think is going to happen, we're just going to invite you to breathe with us. And today, just super simple. We're not going to give you any special kind of breathing. Leah's given us the go ahead and put your hand on your heart for extra connection. And I'm just going to invite you to do this with a downward gaze or close eyes and just focus on your breath. Focus on if you're breathing just in your chest, maybe pushing it down a little farther into your belly. Feel your belly expand. Breathe a little slower through your nose. Let it go out through your mouth. Just notice how you feel as you do that. I like to breathe in, thank you. Exhale, thank you. Just quick meditation that can change your day in a moment. So there are other times we'll offer you different breathing patterns and suggestions to go along with it. Today, just quick breathing, just as a reminder of when you find yourself in a space where emotions are going up and intelligence is going down. Just flip that hand up there on your heart and just breathe a little bit deeper. Give yourself that pause and get back into your heart and into your intelligence. Oh my gosh. I am so excited. I think I needed that breathing for me today because I want to talk 100 miles an hour or a second, maybe, because about a month ago when I was in Lethbridge, I was wandering through the hills with Leah and I'm flipping through some things on my phone and all of a sudden I see this cool piece of art and I'm like, well, that's kind of fascinating. That's I wonder who drew that. And I clicked on it and I looked a little closer. I'm like, the Naked Pastor, what the? And it really caught my attention. And so as I was wandering and trying to have conversation with Leah and act like I was paying attention, I was flipping through more of the Naked Pastor stuff and thinking, oh my heck, he's got a lot of stuff. And then I was like, wait, he's from Canada. How cool is that? I have this new love for Canada. Um, and while I was wandering the coulees, I thought, I really want to be able to interact with this cool human being and hear more of his story and bring him on our Living Courageously Exposed podcast so you can do the same thing. Now, like our other interviews, I have never met the Naked Pastor until 10 minutes ago when he popped on my screen. I've perused his stuff. I find it very fascinating, endearing. What's the other word I'm looking for? I can relate to it as I have been on my own journey of deconstructing and reconstructing and having like all the just brain, all of the things in the heart that just is like I just don't know what to do. I have found his stuff very refreshing, and I feel
so
like
fit to Living Courageously Exposed.
so perfect. Why is that, Leah? In your opinion?
Just the Naked Pastor. How else? How much more exposed can you really be? And just going, against all the things that we've been taught and how we grew up. And I'm just really excited since you brought him to our attention, to our world. So.
I love it. So what I do know about David is he was in Christian ministry for 30 years, pastoring different churches. Decided, I believe, it was in 2010 that he couldn't follow that path anymore and started his own journey. And then was like, wow, this is something that I can't do alone, or I don't want to do alone. And started a community where he shares his drawings, his stories, and meets new people. And today I'm just super excited to be one of those people. And we're going to bring him on screen and introduce you to David Hayward, the Naked Pastor. Oh, hey, David.
Hi. How
Oh
are
my
you?
gosh, I'm fantastic. It's so great to meet you today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Did we give you a proper enough
Yeah.
intro?
Yeah. No, that was great. That was
That's
great.
really cool. So again, I love the artwork and stuff that you put out, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute, I believe. But let's just jump into this,
Sure.
and I'm going to ask you our first question.
Okay.
Or really our only question planned. And that is, what were you like as a little kid? And what did you want to be when you grow up? I guess it's two parts to one question.
Yeah.
I always love everyone's reaction to that question. It
I
always
was
takes
like,
them by surprise. Your face was so
Yeah.
priceless for that.
Yeah. I didn't expect that. But that's a good question. And it's funny because I've been thinking a lot about it lately. By the way, hi. Thank you for having me on your show.
oh my gosh.
Really good to meet you.
Thank
And
you.
Leah, are you Canadian?
Yes, I am. I'm from Ontario, and I recently moved up to what's it called, Alberta.
What's it called?
I
Where
pulled out my Tim Hortons today.
Yeah,
we call them Timmies out here.
Mhm.
yeah, we do. Where are you from, David?
Well, where in Ontario?
I was living in. Do you know where Brantford is?
Yeah.
Just outside of Brantford, Woodstock area, out in the country. I lived there for about 10 years, and then I lived in Kitchener another 10 years there. So.
Well, I grew up in Newmarket, so.
Oh, okay. I know where that is. Yeah.
Ontario. Yeah. So.
Are you still in Canada now?
Everybody who's watching, huh?
Are you still in Canada now?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. Thank God. No.
No.
I'm only kidding.
I'm just gonna laugh.
Look, I'm married to an American. Our 3 adult children are all dual as a result because I'm Canadian. My wife's American. She's also Canadian now.
Well, we really need to have a chat afterwards about some of that stuff.
Yeah. So, what was I like as a child? Well, it's really interesting because I've been thinking about this lately. I'm an artist. I write, I paint, I draw, I do sculptures, I make music. I'm just constantly creating. And I remember I've been thinking back to when I was a child because I was always kind of brooding, like kind of
Brood. That's a great word. Brooding.
and sort of inside myself. And I was drawing. I drew and everything ever since I can remember, and painting and stuff, making music when I was a young teenager and things. And so it's kind of interesting because even though I had friends, I had a very rich kind of an inner life and creative life. but I felt weird about that.
Right.
And kind of out of place, and if I started feeling awkward or uncomfortable or unhappy with a group, I would very easily leave and go home and pull out, my pencil and paper or my guitar or whatever, or put on an album or whatever. So I very much an introverted, kind of a creative kind of a life, but I think in a way I felt isolated because of that.
Right.
And I remember my dad calling me moody, and
Ooh,
and that I was a powder, and
really?
my mom defending me. But sorry, that's my phone. Sorry about
You're good. You're
that.
good.
But and so I I had a very strange kind of a childhood. Yeah, and when I went to college, where I met my wife, it was the same thing. I was involved in creative things, but also trying to keep my studies going and all that stuff. So yeah, good question.
That's fascinating that I love that you said you had a rich, I don't think I've had a guest ever say that, a rich inner life, especially as a kid, that you recognize that. Like what did for those who might really have no idea what that is, in your words, or what was your experience of that for you? Like what did that
Well,
mean to you?
I
In your life?
felt, yeah, I felt um, different, like unique, but that's not cool when you're young, right?
Right. Well, sometimes
And
it's not cool when you're older.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Like I felt very unique, different. So, but I could blend in enough. I could have friends and things, but I had this inner life of creativity and thinking differently, and um, that made me feel isolated, but also because of the pressures out there. And plus, I grew up in a very religious kind of a culture, church culture. Uh,
Right.
I felt a lot of pressure to not be authentic,
Mm.
Right.
and not to reveal my true self, and to
So fascinating.
yeah. So there were like two bumpers, kind of like a bowling lane, and with kids that instead of the troughs, they put foam
Yeah.
down. That's
Yeah.
what my
Your
life
little
felt like,
bumpers.
very carefully staying within the lines. And
Oh,
until, when I became an adult and, getting older, I felt more and more courage and even the necessity to, you know, be my true self.
right. I appreciate how you say. I'm just thinking back, like listening to your story, and maybe Leah can relate a little bit too. Of like my own. I was a quiet kid. I would say introspective, shy, and I'm thinking back. I'm like I had a lot of ideas. I wanted to, entrepreneurial, and um, there
Right.
was creativity stuff in there, but I think I felt like I was never really sure how to express that or where to express it because again, in the religion that I grew up in, there was a lot of I'm conformity, like doing it right, and
Mm.
perfectionism that I've spent most of my life like really um, I'm going to say plagued by the perfectionism of that, and
Yeah.
so I appreciate how you talked about that and like just that how do I show those parts of myself, but these boundaries and I appreciate
I think that's just a human thing. Like it's everywhere, right?
sure.
Every child, every teenager, every young adult, every adult experiences that uh, pressure to conform and to fit in and not color outside of the lines and not be too different, be unique,
Mhm.
Right.
too unique. And but the problem is, my experience is that religion dials that up like a lot,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
the pressure is even more intense with the religious kind of a culture. So
So
that
Yeah.
was my experience.
So how
Yeah.
did you find your way through that? Like to have the confidence and the courage to break free of that, to really own that part of yourself? Because I agree with you. Like we all kind of go through that. I didn't have a lot of religious influence myself, but
Uh-huh.
I definitely pulled away from creativity and saw it more like a childhood thing, and I wanted to be cool, and so I drifted away from that, and it took like some hard things to get me back to the life saving of that. What was that for you?
I read a book once by Polaniuk. He's the author who wrote Fight Club, you know,
Oh, okay.
and he writes really strange fiction, like very, graphic kind of stuff. But he wrote a book on writing, and in that book, he said he learned a huge lesson that he needs to write not to be loved, but to be remembered.
Ooh.
And I took that to heart, like, because a lot of what I did, we all just want to be loved.
Absolutely.
And so we do what is required to receive that love.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way the world works.
Yeah.
And or that's what I thought. And so I would test and experiment, but my strategy, I'm the oldest of 5 kids. I was the oldest of 5 kids. My strategy was to comply at home
Oh, yes.
and
Yes.
not rock the boat. So
Right. Peacemaker.
that's exactly what my mom called me.
Yeah.
And she said, she called me a peacekeeper, like, where I just wanted there to be peace. I didn't want any conflict. And
Right.
to this day, but my other siblings, they all have their own response and strategies, totally different than mine.
Right. Right.
So that's how and then wouldn't you know, I go into the ministry, and which is one of the most high pressure positions that you can take, where you need to conform and comply and follow
Right.
the rules. And
I
so
would think so. Yeah.
it was quite a trick for me to maneuver all that.
What kinds of things? So I grew up in the LDS religion, and I'm not super familiar with like how other religions, like how what you've got to do to become a pastor. Like, what's your studies? What kinds of things you have to do to, like, I'm just curious about this. When you're like, it's one of the highest thing, I see it because you're up there. People look up to you. They want, they feel like
Right.
you have their answers, that you're the one who talks to God, even for them sometimes. What kinds of things what's your education or your study to become a pastor or spiritual leader?
So do your listeners know LDS means Latter-day Saints, which means
Latter-day Saints, which means Mormons. A lot of them do, but for those who don't, there you go. Thank you.
So I have a lot of what they call themselves ex-mo followers, ex-Mormon, a lot of ex-mos, because they identify with, and my cartoons and my work resonate with them, because it's all about breaking free
It
from
very much has,
and discovering your own spiritual independence. So, well, for me, in the Protestant, generally speaking, I had to go through a bunch of steps. So I need a BA, and then you need a master's of theology, and then a master's of divinity for ministry. To be a minister. And then you need to pass exams and interviews and everything, and you need to be endorsed by what's called a presbytery, which is a group of churches geographically. And then if you pass all that, then you're ordained. There's a special service, and your hands are placed on you, and you're ordained to the ministry, and then you're placed in a church. There you go.
So if I understand, just making sure I heard that correctly. So a bachelor's and master's can come from like anywhere you choose to study?
It needs to be a theological master's, and depending on the denomination you are a part of, it does depend where you go for your master's, your MDiv, your master's of divinity. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I went to Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary in Boston for my master's, and then to top it up to make the equivalent of a master's of divinity, I went to Presbyterian College at McGill University in Canada.
Okay. Wow. Wow.
That's up near Quebec, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that really stood out for you that you, while you were studying, that were like, just, wow, this is so amazing, or things that really touched you in your journey to become a pastor in your studies? What were some of the things that just like, you're like, wow, that gave meaning or deep meaning to what you were doing?
Well, it's a weird story. I kind of ended up in the ministry by accident.
Now I'm totally curious.
Yeah, I got a master's in theological studies, majoring in New Testament studies. So
okay,
my plan was to be a Bible scholar. That's what I wanted to be.
Okay.
And so I actually started, I got accepted into the PhD program at Toronto University in New Testament. And so, up at this point now, I've already had years of biblical Greek, years of biblical Hebrew. I've even taken Aramaic. I'm studying theological German, theological French, all this kind of stuff. And I started my PhD in New Testament studies when my wife, we get pregnant. And suddenly we couldn't afford to keep going down this track. I didn't know what to do. And
Gotcha.
so the president of Presbyterian College happened to be in Toronto. I was asked if I could pick him up at the train station. He was coming from Montreal to the University of Toronto to speak. I was chosen to go and pick him up. And he says, he's a very friendly guy. Klempa was his name. And I told him, I don't know what to do. I don't feel like I can afford continuing on in my PhD studies. He says, well, I've got a deal for you. He said, come to McGill, take 1 year to top up your Master's of Divinity degree, ministry degree.
Right.
And we'll ordain you. And while you're doing that, you can have a student charge pastoring a church as a student. So that'll give you housing and a income.
Wow.
After that, we'll ordain you and place you. And it was a deal too good. I could not turn it down.
Right.
And that's how I ended up in the ministry.
Oh my word.
So there was
did it take you much to think about that, or just like, no, I'm done deal?
Well, I went home. It was like I didn't really have a choice. So
yeah.
But it wasn't terrible. I mean, it was second best. But and then I invested myself into being a good pastor, and I pastored churches for 30 years. So
when you say you invested yourself to be a good minister, what did that mean for you? Like, what kinds of things in your mind and in your heart made a person a good minister? Like, what was that journey for you?
Well, my philosophy of ministry and church and everything is very different than a lot. So I do not agree with a top-down kind of an approach to ministry or to community or to the church.
Would authority be inside of that? Would authority be inside of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So for me, it was more journeying alongside with people, and I'm there if you need me, kind of an approach.
Yeah.
I'm not going to preach from the mountaintop with the 10 Commandments telling you what to do. Or, I saw this article once. I can't remember which magazine it was in. Might have been National Geographic. Maybe it was The Atlantic or something. But anyway, it was this real hot young man who was a shepherd in Angola or somewhere. And this rough, young-looking, rugged guy. And he was a shepherd up in the mountains of Angola. And it showed him with his sheep. And I was intrigued by it because mostly he was following the sheep around in the wilderness. And I thought, because pastor is literally shepherd, like
right.
That's a literal translation of the word pastor.
Okay.
Is shepherd. And I was intrigued, like, that's how I want to pastor, where people just want. I really believe that if people are uh, given their independence, their autonomy, their self-determination, that they will grow. They will be okay.
Yeah.
And but I'll be there for you if you need insight, advice, comfort, encouragement, validation, support, all those things. I'm there for you.
Wow.
And so basically, if I say, what, that could be dangerous, or, protect the community from wolves or whatever, like I'll be there for that. But I'm not going to lead you. You have to follow me where I go. For me, it's you figure it out. I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And so I really do believe in that
I
virtue of
I
spiritual independence.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. A few years back, I had a client who was um, she was in the Lutheran religion, and she was a chaplain and had other like pastoral. I don't know if you would call it pastoral. I don't know all the terms, but
Yep.
she was a religious leader inside of
Yep.
these churches, and she also did a lot with hospice. And we had really beautiful conversations about what she, her thoughts on Bible things were, and gospel teachings and Jesus. And one day she said to me, um, my teaching was that Jesus said, "Come follow me," and she beautifully put it in a way that it kind of blew my mind. And I think it goes along with what you're saying about just being there, watching your flock and being there for them. And she said, I believe that he said something more like, "Hey, come see what I'm doing. Like,
Mhm.
come see what I'm doing. Check it out. See if it works for you. And if you want to know more, like, I'm here to give you guidance or wisdom or help you solution find, or like make sure the wolves are away." I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
how you just put that, and you just brought that to mind. It just
Yeah, if
feels
you
more
read between the
gentle.
lines, if you read between the lines in the Gospels, there's never any pressure. There's never any vision for growth or
Interesting.
success or influence. So yeah, I think your friend is right.
So talk a little bit more about that. That's the first time I've heard anyone say that when you read between the lines, that there, what'd you say? There's not talk of visions of
No.
growth, and tell share more of that.
So one of Christianity's heroes, theologian, German theologian Bonhoeffer, um, he he wrote a book called I can't remember the name of the title. Something to do with community. Anyway, in that book, he says that vision is the enemy of community, and I took that to heart as well. That when you try to impose a vision on a group of people um, together, that's the name of the book. If you try to impose a vision on a group of people, it kills the community. And so I employed that idea when I was, you know, taking care of churches, was just to let them be, just to provide as safe a place as possible for people to discover who they are, to be and express their most authentic selves. And that to me was very successful. But there's no guarantee of growth. There's no guarantee of success or influence or anything like that. It's just people being, you know. And I found it very, very powerful. So that's how I approach community online as well. I have
Yeah.
an online community called the Lasting Supper, and
Yes.
that attitude it reigns there as well.
Yeah, I want to talk more about that when we get down the road to just a second. Okay, for those of you, just a quick side break. For those of you who might be seeing flashing blue, I don't know if you guys are seeing it too. As
I
long as we
am.
can still hear each other, I'm going to call it good. I'm not sure what's going on, but
I think it's when Leah types something in the chat. I think it just flashes blue for a
oh, is it
second,
flash?
but that's fine. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to be okay with that. Thanks for. I was like,
Maybe.
why is it
Okay.
flicking back and forth? But that's okay. I'd rather have you type things in the chat, Leah.
Yeah.
That's a new glitch. But how did I love how that feels. And I'm curious as to how your congregations, what's the word? Like how they moved with that kind of leadership. How did they show up when that was a leadership? Because in my experience, it's like we're always taught to, because that feels like you're teaching them to go to themselves. But if they need a sounding board or something they may not have thought of, solution finding or whatever, that you're there. How did they respond to that kind of leadership or guidance?
I actually had people sit down in front of my desk and say to me, listen, we pay you to tell us what to believe.
That.
Yeah. And I would say, well, I'm not your guy. And because that just stunts growth.
Yeah.
I'll use the analogy when Lisa and I, my wife and I, when our kids were very young, we would take them to one of our favorite buffets.
Okay.
And we would go in and we would sit the kids down and we'd go to Lisa would go to the buffet and get the kids meats. This is when they were very young.
Okay.
Get their plates of food. But as they got a little older, we would let them take their own plate and go choose the food. But Lisa or I would take away something or add something depending on whether we thought it was appropriate for them.
Right.
Eventually, when they became like, teenagers, we just let them go at it and, overlook, a plate full of whipped cream. You know what I mean?
Right.
And because, it's only once, who cares? When they became adults, like, do we invade their homes and check their cupboards and fridges and make sure they're eating healthy? No, they know by now what is healthy, what's not healthy, what's good for them, what works for them, what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy. And it's totally up to them now. Like, we don't have to worry about their diet anymore.
Right.
We shouldn't worry about their diet, right? So it's the same thing with communities. No matter how new somebody might be, it could be, look, I'm here for you if you need some insight onto what's healthier than something else, I might know that, or I could lead you in the right direction.
Right.
Here's some research you can look, or here's some resources, you can check them out yourself. But also, you need to get in touch with your own body and figure out what works for you. Like,
I love
I know
that.
some people who are trying the be vegetarian. It doesn't work for them. I know some other people who are trying to be carnivore. It doesn't work for them. For some people, it does work. I'm constantly experimenting. I'm having fun doing it, but I'm figuring out what works for me. And
I love that response.
What works for me is this cross section of what's best for me and what I enjoy the most. So if I can find that perfect mark, that's where I'll stay, right? And it's just spiritually.
And how do you know, before you go into the spirituality, how do you know when you've hit that crotch section? What does it feel like in your body? What do you experience when you're like, that's the thing?
Well, all the things. You're sleeping better. You're more present. There's no brain fog. You're having regular bowel movements. You're you're on your game sexually. You're all this stuff.
Yes.
Right? So when all those things align, then okay, this is working for me, and that's the gauges I use anyway. Maybe the sex thing's at the top.
Yes. I love it.
There it is. I actually appreciate that you can speak that, because let's be real, it's a human thing. It's joyful, it's pleasurable, and we're just gonna normalize it right here.
Yeah. Totally.
Okay, So in spirituality, you were moving to like how to find that crosshair in spirituality.
Well, I grew up in a religious culture that used a lot of fear and shame and guilting, intimidation, conformity to keep you in line.
Right.
And so it's very difficult for people who want to be spiritually independent. Or, when I use the word spiritual, by the way, I don't necessarily invoke any divinity.
Gotcha.
For me, spiritual just means your inner life. Okay. It could
Yes.
be, you could call it your emotional life, intellectual life, psychological life, your soul life. It's your inner life. So for people who are becoming more and more spiritually independent, a lot of it is getting rid of the fear, the shame, the
Oh
guilt,
man. Yes.
pressure to conform, all those things. And in fact, I think that's the biggest project. It's like planting a seed, a tomato plant in your garden. The biggest thing to do is to get rid of the enemies, pests, rocks, the lack of fertilizer, weeds, the things that get in the way of growth. So for
Yeah.
me, it's getting rid of all those negative things, the things that get in the way of our growth. If you can figure out a way to be free of fear, guilt, shame, pressure to conform, all that stuff, man, you're creating a safe space for yourself to grow. So
I
that's for
love
me the biggest project.
oh my gosh, I love that. As you're talking, I'm seeing now I can't remember the artist. He went in and he studied cadavers of like all the different like ways a body is formed, musculature and
Michelangelo.
sinews. Is it Angelo?
Yeah,
But
Michelangelo.
it's the one where he like carves someone's like, how do you do that? How do you know that they're in there? He's like, I'm just chipping away the pieces. They're already there. And I feel like what you're talking about is kind of the same thing, like breaking free of all the structure
Yeah.
so that we can grow in. I like to call it formation, but chipping the fear and the shame and the guilt. And I
Yeah.
love how you put that.
One of my there's a really good movie. I really like it. It's called The Last Samurai.
Okay.
And Tom Cruise, all that aside, The Last Samurai, the whole movie, the chieftain in the Japanese village, the samurai chieftain, he's on this little side project of looking for the perfect cherry blossom, you know.
Okay.
So throughout the movie, he's looking for this perfect cherry blossom. Anyway, at the very end of the movie, look, this is a spoiler, but if you haven't seen it by now, I can't help you.
Yeah.
Go
So
see
at
it.
the very end of the movie, he's lying on the battlefield at the end of his life, and there's a gust of wind, and all these cherry blossoms come blowing over him and through the field, and Tom Cruise is holding him and in his arms, and while he's dying, and the chieftain says, "They're all perfect."
Oh, wow.
Whoa,
That's the
dang.
same idea as we're already perfect.
Absolutely.
Problem is, we've
Absolutely.
been blinded to that and taught that that's not true. And
Yeah.
so for me, it's getting past all the thoughts and all the judgments and all the pressures and all this stuff to get to the truth of the matter that we're way more perfect than we ever dreamed already.
Already.
There, I tell a lot of people who've begun their deconstruction journey, questioning their beliefs, questioning their faith, maybe leaving the church, etc., and they're filled with fear about what's going to happen
Oh
and all,
man.
like and how they're going to turn out. Oh my God, am I going to become an atheist? Kind of thing. And
Right.
I'm like, look, when you end up where you are finally happy and you have peace, you're going to realize you've been there the whole time.
Oh,
And that's
wow.
really true. You're already there. You just don't know it. So for
That
me,
right
the
there.
pressure
That
off.
piece right there.
yeah. So for me, my my journey with people is just constantly affirmation and validation. You no longer need permission. You no longer need people checking in on you or correcting you or disciplining you or whatever. You're
Yes.
already there. You just don't know it yet.
Oh my gosh, I love that you just said that. You know, I have people ask me because I do life coaching and personal coaching, and people are always like, "What's your program?" I'm like, "You're my program. My job is to help you see already your beautiful, amazing, oh my gosh, awesomeness
Yeah.
and perfection, just as you are.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to focus on what's wrong with you because there's nothing wrong with you. We're going to help you see all the amazing that is you already.
Yeah.
And so I love that you just said that.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks.
let's will you talk briefly about the moments where you were like, oh my gosh, after 30 years, I can't continue to go down that path. Like what was that for you, and what helped you make the decision to step out of the pastoral work and start a deconstruction process of your own, and this new I'm going to call it wild path.
It is wild. But my deconstruction began way back when I graduated from seminary.
Okay.
It was a long time ago.
Wow.
And it culminated though the year before I left the ministry, where it was in 2009, and I had this profound moment where I just felt and saw the oneness of everything,
Hmm.
and that there's one reality, but we all have our own interpretations of it, our own take, and our own way to explain it, all that. But there's just one reality. And I was excited about that. It brought me peace of mind, the peace of mind I'd been looking for and finally had. And I still have that spiritual peace of mind. And I just started to share that and on my blog that I've been running since 2005, Naked Pastor.
Okay.
And I've been
Okay.
cartooning for years. And but I was starting to get calls from head office uh, telling me that maybe I should run my stuff through them first before I published it. And I knew I wasn't.
Whoa.
So the reason I left the ministry was so that I could continue growing
Okay.
in peace and not being. So I felt the need to break away and escape from that pressure to conform, and
Right.
I did. And it took me a couple of years to find my feet, but I eventually did, and I decided to invest full time into Naked Pastor, which had been running already for 5 years. But
That's so incredible. Just like the hindsight of that, like you started that with an idea in mind of like where that might go or what you were doing, and like what it's turned into today is so beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, so you said it took you a couple of years. What kinds of things did you experience in that journey to be where you are today? Well, maybe not even today, but like maybe like was it 2012 when you started the actual community of like putting your stuff out there and being like, there's other people who could use this. What were some of those things on your journey that were maybe?
Well, yeah. So in 2005, I started blogging, but I started cartooning in like 2006 or something. And so
Okay,
I was, building a fan base already. Fans,
gotcha.
followers were starting to like my cartoons and everything.
Yeah.
And I was an artist already selling paintings and things like that. And I started selling cartoons, and books, writing books. I'm on my 11th book now, 12th book actually.
Oh
And
my gosh.
so, things were already growing, and that's why I decided to see if I could make it a full-time job. And so in 2010, when I left the ministry, that's what I did. I started focusing on that. And then in 2012, I launched my online community called The Lasting Supper. I've opened a store where you can buy my prints and all that kind of a thing. But it the right after I left the ministry, it was a very traumatic time for me
Yeah.
and for me and Lisa, because we didn't know anything else. We'd been together since Bible college, and
Wow.
all we knew was working in the church and together. And it was very traumatizing because we lost our friends, we lost our community, I lost my income,
Right.
you know.
Was she having the same, like, kind of journey as you at the same time? Like, how did that, because I know that can destroy relationships, and, like,
Yeah.
how was that for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult. It was a lot of figuring out how to stay married. Um, in fact, I wrote a book about it called "Till Doubt Do Us Part: When Changing Beliefs Change Your Marriage,"
I
and
love it.
um, you know, it's helped a lot of people who've gone through a similar thing where they might have been on the same page and then suddenly something changes and they're not. And it took a couple years for us to figure out how to continue on in our relationship. And so now we've been married 24 years or 44
Wow.
years. 44 years.
Congratulations. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
wow.
amazing, my friend. Like, and to go through, like, the stuff that you've gone through, I mean, just everyday relationship stuff is challenging, and managing each other's growth, but having, a faith deconstruction, or all that's big stuff. Like,
That is very
way to
big.
go. Thanks for being such great examples in that. And we will make sure that our listeners also have links. It looks like Leah's getting them in the comments, to get to your stuff, so that you as the listener can find the Naked Pastor and purchase his artwork, purchase his books, learn a little bit more that way.
Yeah.
Um, oh my gosh. Okay, so we're getting close to an hour mark. Will you tell us? Well, one, is there, and before we get to the Lasting Supper community, is there anything else that you feel like would be important, or that's on your heart to share, as far as, like, a deconstruction journey, and someone listening who might just be starting that path or on it and not sure what to do,
Uh-huh.
that was helpful for you, or just any last things? And then I want to go to the lasting supper, and then this 5 stages of deconstruction.
Yeah. So the big point for me is deconstruction is normal. It's healthy spiritual growth. This isn't anything new. More and more people are talking about it though, but it's not a new phenomenon. Spiritual growth has been happening ever since people have populated the earth. And you know, what people questioning their beliefs, that's natural. That's normal. It should
Part of
happen.
growth.
Yeah, we should be growing. The new word we're using right now for that is deconstruction because it means unbuilding, you know, tearing down former beliefs and so on that no longer suffice
I
or
I
prove
think for my Yeah, I think for myself, that dissonance of being told we're to grow and expand and all the things, but not really. Like, you
mm,
can, but it's got to be inside of this, or it's got to be that part. Like,
right.
really was jarring for myself, and I know for lots of other people. Um, can you speak to that for just a moment? I love that you're like, this is normal. It's how it should be.
Well, the way it used to be was that the church was the authority and told you what to believe. And if you started questioning that, you had a choice. Either express out loud your questions and get ostracized or kicked out, excommunicated,
Right,
or keep it inside, keep it to yourself. Those were your only choices. Then, in more recently, in the past few years, people have been more outspoken about their doubts
yes,
and don't feel the need for the authority of the church or even the church itself. And
right,
COVID intensified that, where people
right,
realized, man, I haven't been to church in months and I don't miss it. And I actually feel better. So,
right.
you know,
That piece, that's shocking, to be like, I actually feel better, and why do
yeah,
I feel bad about that?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that to me is the big thing to go in. If you're just heading into deconstruction, realize everybody's always been doing it, but now it's a more recognized. That's what I feel I'm doing, is normalizing deconstruction.
I love that you said that, because I talk about that about just normalizing human experience, like
Yeah.
normalizing emotions, normalizing, like you say, growth and all the pieces of that. So
Right.
thank you for your work in that way. Okay, so let's why we're normalizing this deconstruction. Like, tell us about this fun
Yeah.
stages of deconstruction, what the 5 stages are that you have, and just a little snippet on each of them, and then we'll let people know, like, you actually can have this for yourself.
Yep.
And we'll let them know how.
Yep. So in 2012, because I had left the church and I was experiencing a lot of loneliness and everything, and I saw a lot of other people experiencing it too, people who were deconstructing, questioning their beliefs and everything, and didn't have a place to go or anybody to talk to or connect with, I started theLastingSupper.com. So it's an online community for people who are going through that. And it's still going to this day, 14 years later. No,
That is
12 years later.
incredible.
And yeah, so I keep pumping out stuff to help people with their deconstruction. And one of the things is the 5 stages of deconstruction. I borrowed from Kubler-Ross,
I noticed that.
who wrote the book on the 5 stages of grief and death and dying. And they are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So she noticed that these were sort of 5 stages that people go. Some people don't like the word stages, some prefer the word phases, and you don't necessarily have to go through them in order, and you can spiral around or experience them all at the same time. But basically, they do adequately describe our experience as we do go through the very traumatic thing we call deconstruction. So yeah, if you go on my Instagram or wherever, Naked Pastor,
Pastor,
and ask for that, make sure you get it.
Okay, and we've stuck that his links in the comments. You can find him on Facebook, on Instagram. Where else other platforms are you using?
Yeah, so theLastingSupper.com, that's another link. But I'm on all social media. I'm on TikTok, I'm on X, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Threads, LinkedIn, YouTube. I'm everywhere.
He is connected, and you can get connected with him as well on whatever platform.
Place is Instagram, I think, is my most active online community.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I really appreciate that you talked about, like, the difficulty. I just now forgot the word. Just how challenging deconstructing can be. Just releasing those pieces of us that have been identified as just part of who we are for so long. And the work that you've done for yourself and other people to normalize it and say, hey, you're actually just already an amazing human being.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I enjoy what I do, and it's because it's encouraging and helping people. So
it's amazing. I know for myself, I'm super excited to continue to follow your work. I love the art that I see. It makes me giggle. Sometimes I'm like, oh man, that one really kind of hits home. And others I'm like, yeah. And so just thank you for sticking it out there and having the courage to do it. I know for myself and a lot of other people that are in my world, it's been a challenge. It's been scary to want to actually stand up and use my voice in the ways that I feel like I'm being gently guided to use my voice, because I have no intention to speak against, but just to say, like, hey, this is my journey, and I feel amazing in my connection with spirituality, or with the energy that I call God, or where I stand with all of that. And I appreciate you coming on here today and helping me use my voice in that way. That actually makes me emotional. And just the work that you do for other people to do the same thing is incredible. I look forward to getting to know you more and just following your work. And I would encourage those of you who are watching or listening to look up the Naked Pastor, check out his work. I think you'll find it intriguing. You'll find it maybe heart-wrenching in places, because it hits home so deeply, but also relieving that you're not alone in your journey.
That's
and
right.
that other people are here to support you and actually care for you and lend you a hand or an ear or words of affirmation.
Hmm.
And David, the Naked Pastor, is one of those people. So, any last words of wisdom? If you were to give three pieces of wisdom, of wisdom to our listeners today that you felt like really assisted you on this journey, or that you just give today for people, what would those be?
Well, for me, it's going to be different. Like I say, there's only one way to deconstruct, and that's your way. So take
Yes,
ownership of yourself, love yourself, and express yourself, because we need it. Nobody else can be you except you, and so we want you. And
I love it.
so that's what I would say.
We want you. I love it. And again, this is a work that we do at Righteous Rebels. I think we've just been trying to figure out what that looks like for us, and I appreciate the clarity that you have brought to my personal um,
Mm,
desire to help other people. I want to say vision, my vision of what it looks like to just stand in a shepherding space, to just love people and say, yeah, you're doing it well. You're
yeah,
doing it well.
yeah.
So thank you. And we definitely want more of you,
Thank you.
more of you.
I'll do my
Uh,
best.
yes. So go find the Naked Pastor on any or all of the platforms, support his work, purchase his stuff, and let us know in the comments where you're at in your process. If you're in a process, what you liked about today's conversation, what you learned from it, and how you plan to take it and implement it in your daily lived experience. And with that, we just say thank you. We love you. We appreciate you. We think you're freaking amazing. And we look forward to you joining us another time. Remember, be bold, be courageous, be a rebel. We'll see you soon.